how's my ladies doing this morning? And my dudes? Huh? Okay. I'll find you guys some more stuff later on, okay? Hello everybody, welcome back to Hidden Harvest with Liz. My name is Liz, and I have got a brand new garden, as in brand new beds for this year, in Zone 8A/B. We are in Middle Georgia, and today we're going to do yet another garden tour. Hopefully, eventually, I can get to where everything's settled enough for me to be able to do more regular videos, but as of right now, these are the ones that I can do. And to be honest, there's been a lot of changes, and I'm not sure how I feel about all of the changes. I have learned so much this year in the garden, and I have got so many more plans. So right now, everybody's already talking about fall gardening, and I am still in the midst of trying to figure out the summer garden. But I do have some blank spaces, and I don't really like a blank canvas. I like to have something on it, so I do want to go through all of my seeds to find out what I actually have time to plant. And I have a feeling I'm going to be doing that this weekend. So hopefully in the next video, you'll actually see what it is I chose and how it's doing. I did at one point do a secondary planting of squash, and it did not turn out so great. So let me show you what I did, where things are going on, what has been pulled out, what's been harvested and stuff like that, and we can start talking about the next phase. All right, in bed number 1, I have already gotten most of the tomatoes. There's one that's got like a single tomato left on it that I am waiting on, but all of the other tomatoes have come out, and hiding back behind this is an eggplant that was being eaten up by flea beetles that somehow or another survived. I don't know how it survived. It's not producing anything, and I don't think it will, but it lived this long, so I don't want to get rid of it. It's like, it went through a huge rite of passage. It'd be rude to actually tear it down now. And then I have got my cherry tomatoes. Now, if you remember right down here, I did have some nasturtiums growing that eventually just died. And then I had... Hi, Alpha. What's up, dude? You're on camera now. There you go, talk about it. Tell the world about it, dude. I actually think he thinks that my camera is a rooster. He does not appreciate a rooster near his hens, except for the roosters he's already got, I don't know, submissive or whatever in there. I'm not sure exactly about this pecking order. It's not a rooster, it's a camera. Do I need to bring it over there so you can sniff it? Treat you like a puppers? Do you need to sniff it? Oh my gosh, the bass on the dude. He's grown up so much. See, it's not a chicken. I know it looks like a chicken. It's not a chicken. The camera is not a chicken. Okay. To be fair, I haven't actually talked about my chickens in a while. We did the chicken coop and all of the stuff and things for the chickens, but I haven't talked about them in a while, and they have grown so much. They are not producing eggs yet, but they have definitely decided on an alpha. He's the one who crows every single day. None of the others do. We do have 2 other roosters that will probably eventually be put into a... I felt like that was coming again. My husband and I have talked about it, that we are thinking about doing a chicken meat program, sort of, kind of thing. So what we would like to do is create like a separate flock, and our other 2 roosters would go over there, along with probably some, I don't know, I think Rhode Island Reds would probably be a very good multi-breed that do eggs, but also would be very good for meat. And in which case, I don't necessarily want to get rid of these roosters just yet. Oh, you didn't do it this time. You're right behind me. I see you. Come here, Alpha. Come here. He seriously thinks the camera is a chicken. He doesn't crow like this usually. That's the reason I know he thinks you guys are the chicken. He thinks the camera is the chicken. I think that keeping the other 2 roosters, since we already know them and they've been around us and everything like that, raised them from baby chicks, having those guys and then having them crossbreed with some Rhode Island Reds since Rhode Island Reds will probably produce more of themselves because they're a crossbreed that will lay and are somewhat broody whenever they go in, but I'm not exactly sure, and I'm thinking that's probably going to have to... Okay, there it is. And that's probably going to have to wait until like next season. For this 1 year, I think just learning to care for chickens and dealing with the ups and downs of having chickens is enough. In which case, we probably will have to move our other 2 roosters until... is he going to do it again? There's actually another chicken down the road that I can hear too, so he might be talking to them. There he goes. So I think we're probably going to have to move them out to like a chicken tractor or something like that and allow them to have their best life out grazing in other parts of the yard to keep them from tearing up the pens whenever it becomes time. And it's pretty close to it becomes time because we've already seen Alpha doing his due diligence with his ladies a couple of times, though no eggs have been procured from knowledge of this. I think he's just a little on the early side, a little happy about the situation, if you catch my drift. I'm just gonna leave it there because that's a bit awkward. Anyway, it has been actually very fun learning how to care for chickens. They are very, very curious. Hey you. Hey you. Right now, the chicken coop is kind of soaking wet because we are in the midst of our rainy season. After the drought that we had like a month ago, it has basically rained every single evening since then. And 9 times out of 10, it's as soon as I walk out the door to come work on the garden in the evening time, because it's just gotten cool enough for me to go outside, it will start raining. For like an entire week, as soon as I walked outside, it started raining. One time I was like, you know what? F this, I'm gonna go out and work in the garden anyway, and I stood outside and worked in my garden for like an hour in the rain and then got sick. So I have learned my lesson. Anyway, let's get back to the garden instead of the chickens that absolutely demanded to have attention, because that's what they do. Every time I walk out here, they assume I came out here to give them a snack. So I have to walk around my garden and find something that I can give them and sit over here with them a couple of minutes until they calm down because I've come outside. Back to garden bed number 1. This time I'm actually going to set the camera down so I don't like move it and stuff like that. But like I said, I've got the 1 tomato that's still surviving. There's only 1 left on there, and as soon as it's gone, no, 3 left on there. As soon as those are gone, I'm going to go ahead and take that plant out. I do still have my cherry tomatoes on the trellis here, but there was a Mexican sunflower sitting here in the corner. And I noticed the bigger the Mexican sunflower got, the worse off these plants were doing. So I went ahead and took the Mexican sunflower out. But the rest of the garden bed is just basically at rest for right this second, because I need to do a reset, and like I've been doing with these back beds whenever I reset them, I'm actually putting wood chips instead of straw into the beds. But I'm also attempting to try and make sure that each time I reset a bed, I'm putting organic material back into the bed by burying it. Some of the previous stuff that was there, as long as it's not too bad off, like such as the squash. Whenever we got done with the squash and I finally had to cut it down, it was completely inundated with squash vine borer, in which case I just took it out of the bed and I put it into a burn pile. I'm not going to bury that because there might still be worms that will get into the soil, will create new bugs and create new problems next year. So I won't be doing that with them. Or the tomatoes, I probably, because most of them are succumbing to disease, they won't get buried into the beds. But anything else that is around that I can get buried into the beds to add organic life into the bed and to loosen up the soil, I will. Most of these, though, are perennial herbs. We've got a whole bunch of thyme and sage in this bed right now. And it's just kind of sitting and waiting for me to figure out what I want to do with it. I might wind up resetting this entire bed, and this would be the bed that I put my garlic into. And then I will start my garlic on bed 1 for this upcoming year and then move it back as the seasons progress so that they're not inside the beds every single year. But that is for this year's decision making. I haven't quite made that decision 100%. Let's just go straight back this time because I usually go side to side. Let's go straight back. Now, right now over here on this trellis, we have got a honey nut squash, which is like a butternut squash, but they're smaller server sizes. And they're supposed to be squash vine borer resistant. And I currently have a lot of little baby squashes in. As you can see, they are starting to produce, though that one needs to be cut off because something got into it. That's probably because the bloom fell over on it. Oh yeah, there's some definite weirdness going on right there. Very, very gross. But that still leaves a few squashes that are on here that are still doing okay. We'll see how they start producing and whether or not this works here. And I still have some of my flowers going. One of my third batch of tomatoes, really. But to be honest with you, this batch right here, I'm not really sure of. By the time I had a chance to get these guys in the ground, they didn't even have a label anymore. The labels were all mildewied and everything else like that, so I couldn't necessarily figure out the best place to put these. I think one of them is an indeterminate and one of them is a determinate. I don't think it's going to go very well here, but I'm just going to let it go because it's like the last of the tomatoes, and even though I've had an exceptionally bad tomato year, like as soon as all of my tomatoes started turning red, it's like the rainy season hit and all of the world's worms, bugs, caterpillars just attacked the tomatoes all over the place. And right now my biggest issue that I have is on every single one of my trellises and every single one of my tomato bushes, I have like this leaf-footed bug that just constantly sits there, and with its group of people doing grouply things that are against TOS for me to say right now, they're just sitting there on top of my tomatoes, not even on top of the green parts of my tomatoes, on top of the tomatoes themselves and putting little tiny pinpricks, holes inside all of them. So every single day I'm fighting with those guys. So we'll see how many tomatoes I get. I have been bagging them up and sticking them in the freezer after I core them and stick them in the freezer to see how many I can actually get at the end of the year, assuming we don't eat the tomato fresh. And so far I've gotten like 3 or 4 bags worth of tomatoes, so it's not like we're not producing anything, just not a whole lot at one time. And I am sacrificing so many to the random bugs, the blossom end rot, the whole 9 yards. But if I can learn anything, I can say me planting all of my tomatoes in several different stages has definitely helped, because once one stage gets to a certain point and I can see whatever trouble it's having, I can assume the other tomatoes are likely going to have the same problem and preemptively go ahead and treat them for it. Like the blossom end rot, I saw that they were happening on these ones, so I went ahead and treated the other ones, so hopefully they won't get it. And so far, they've been turning out pretty good. Sadly, none of them have actually come all the way to fruiting, except for the cherry tomatoes, which seems to be a thing. None of my big tomatoes are actually fully getting big. And I have watched a lot of people who do content around my area and found out in the south, down here, there's too much moisture, there's too many dry phases, and then too much inundation with water, there's too much disease. The humidity right now is like at 100%. The entire area is saturated. So the mildew is high on all of the tomato plants. They're all struggling with it. So according to most of them, trying to get a tomato plant to go all the way to the big fruit is nigh on impossible. But the beefsteak, or bush steak as it was called, didn't take as long to start growing and has therefore put on some big fruit, but yet I have not actually gotten one of them to actually start turning red before something got a hold to it. So still out on that one. I'll let you guys know the further we get into all of the tomatoes and everything, and hopefully I can get at least one beefsteak or bush steak tomato. These guys behind me, I don't even know if they are full-size tomatoes. I have no idea what kind these are. They have not produced anything yet, but they are the third planting, not the second planting. And then right behind it, nestled underneath all of this, is my jalapeno that has produced only 3 peppers. Now, I actually tried those and they were pretty good. They had no spice to them at all, but they also did not taste like a jalapeno at all. They tasted like a thin-walled bell pepper. But they were really good on a wrap, so I'm not going to say anything. I ate all 3 of them, or we ate all 3 of them last night. And I don't know how I feel about it being nestled so close to any of these plants now that I think that they might be indeterminate varieties. But it's so late in the season, if I move it, it's probably going to do what most of my other peppers are doing, which is not a whole heck of a lot since the rain started. But let's continue on with the garden. Right here we've got a freaking mess. I don't know what this is. All of my sweet potatoes, you can't tell varieties anymore. It's just a blanket of sweet potatoes. We'll see how this works, whether or not it grows well here or whatever. We have my beefsteaks that are supposed to be the indeterminates that have not produced one single tomato. There's blossoms, not a single tomato, not a one. Now, mind you, that beefsteak was like the third or fourth planting because it would not sprout. So it's exceptionally late to the game. But I have a feeling it's not going to produce anything at all. I don't think it's going to produce anything at this particular point. And then, oh, there's one of them. Whatever this guy is. Get off. Whatever that guy is. Him and all of his buddies and his little group of degenerates sitting on top of all of my tomatoes and putting tiny little holes in them and introducing badness into my tomatoes because it's like tiny little pinpricks. And because there's tiny little pinpricks, things that aren't normally interested in my tomatoes are going after my tomatoes. I've got worms in them. I've got ants all over the place. Well, ants are all over the place in every single bed. That's just like a given. I cannot get rid of the ants. Diatomaceous earth does nothing for them. I've tried the sugar and borax stuff, and they just eat all of it and move into the container, whatever it is. They are relentless. I might have to go more aggressive with them, and by more aggressive I mean non-organic, and I hate to do that. So I think what I may have to do is wait until the fall and most of the beds are already put to sleep for the season and treat around the beds themselves. That way I'm not actually treating the soil where my plants are going to go. I don't like this idea. I really, really don't. But at the same time, I don't see a way around the amount of damage the ants have actually done to most of the beds here, which I already knew the ants were going to be a problem. They've been in every single one of my gardens before, but the damage that they have done this year has been exponential. Every single bed, every single area, places I have not grown before, and therefore the ants would not have reason to be there initially. Like they wouldn't somehow genetically just know. As soon as summertime hits, the big creature that plants the things in the ground is going to plant the things in the ground here, so we should just stick around here until she shows up and just gives us food. They don't have that. This is a brand new garden space, so it's just a thing that exists here all over the place. But aside from that, let's try and be positive about the things we have learned instead of the things that are frustrating, because it is way too easy to get frustrated about, well, the random things that are actually going wrong with the garden and not be happy with the things that are going right. Anyway, my sauce tomatoes that I planted over here, there are several different types of determinate varieties over here that I wanted to test. My sauce tomatoes, I have gotten maybe 2 or 3, but there are a lot more on there that are still waiting to be ripened. And then on the other side of them, I have got a bush steak, which has got the most beautiful, gorgeous tomato on here that I am very anxious for it to actually start blushing so I could pull it from the plant before anything else finds it. And there's a second one here. There's a few more that are mixed in here that are very, very large beefsteak variety tomatoes. And I'm just waiting. I'm watching them every single day for them to start blushing so I can pull them from the plant before something else gets to them. But there is another variety here, and I wish I had all of the markers, because by the time I got to this planting, the markers were done. I am not going to use popsicle sticks next time. They did not last like I wanted them to. But these guys right here are some rather large cherry tomatoes. Well, this is one of the smaller ones, and it's been eaten. I missed it yesterday whenever I was out here picking. Anyway, I still have to stay on top of them, because as soon as they ripen, something will find it if I haven't picked it that day. But they are actually producing a whole lot. And another leaf-footed bug, and I think you're one of the kids. Stop your things. I have actually ordered some 2 different of the organic, the BT and the Spinosad. I don't know. They come in today. I'll remember. I was watching one of the videos and they said that this is the stuff that they use on their garden and this is what it works for. And it's organic. I was like, okay, during this rainy season, it's not going to last on my plants, but if it can get me ahead enough to get a harvest off of it, I need to try it this year just to see if it will help. So I've ordered them and I would be spraying them probably in the morning, and by the time the next day hits, whenever the bees and stuff are out trying to do their pollinating thing, it should be completely gone because it's going to rain practically every evening, which may or may not actually help my plants at all. Because in some cases it has nothing to do with that stuff. And I also need to go through all of my beds and get all of the bad fruit off the bottom of the bed, which might be causing things to get worse. Right here, at the bottom of the same bed, right here, I had planted a yellow-necked squash here, and the squash vine borer got to it before I even got one fruit off of it. So there's that. Just a bad season. If I don't get my squash way early, if I don't figure out how to get it in the ground really quick and pump a whole bunch of squash out of it, it's just not going to happen. As soon as mid-spring hits, squash vine borer is out, and it does not go away around here. Then I have got a whole bed of the Mexican sunflower, very gorgeous. Where's one of the fresh ones? Oh. Very gorgeous flowers. And then right here, if you remember in this bed, it is bed number 5. I had amaranth planted here, but the amaranth after the rainy season started up, it's always looked pitiful. It was like basically a trap crop for a whole bunch of beetles or something like that. So they never looked lovely here, but they started drooping and slowly dying. So I cut them and put them inside the greenhouse to fully dry out. Of course, nothing outside is dry, so I'm not sure that anything's going to happen with it. I have my okra, and we have been getting some okra. I've got some inside the house that I'm going to try and do something with. And then, of course, we've got my green beans here, which has got a very interesting buddy hiding underneath it, so I'm not going to go over there. Where's he at? Oh, there he is. I don't know if that's close enough for you to see it, but it's a rather large orb spider thing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what kind it is. I'm not going to go and investigate it or take a picture of it. I'm just going to leave him alone and let him do his thing. I have had several of those rather large spiders show up in my garden, and I've just been avoiding them. I'm severely arachnophobic. It's like one of the few things I have an issue with is spiders. But I have like a small truce with them. I will leave them alone as long as they're not in the way of me gardening. I had one that I had to evict him. I did not kill him. I was very tempted. I evicted him. I moved his beautiful little structure that he had created and stuff because I needed to cut a plant that he was sitting over. So he's on the other side of a trellis, and I don't want to walk near him either. Yeah, so I've got 2 of them currently living in my garden, and they're making it where certain areas of my garden I don't want to walk. Okay, now we are on to bed number 6. And bed number 6 is full of my first planting of my paste tomatoes, and nearly all of the paste tomatoes are gone. I say nearly all, I've cut 2 out of them. I had 6, and I've cut 2 of them out because, okay, they no longer had any viable fruit left on them, and there were blooms, and they will eventually produce more, but they are honestly taking up a ton of space and not producing very well to start with. Oh my gosh, it's so humid out here. I'm sweating everywhere. I took those out, and as soon as these guys stop producing, well, as soon as they ripen the fruit that's on them enough for me to be able to pull them, this bed will also be taken care of. I am thinking that I'm going to go through all of my seeds and see whether or not I have anything that will plant for summer and have like about 70-ish days till maturity. I don't think I have very many seeds. I know I could probably do some beans, but I'm not really a fan of the beans that I've tried this year. The ones that are back there on the trellis, I did not like. And I I think next year I'm going to be trying a different one. And the bush beans that we have, I've tried those before and I really didn't care for those either. If anybody's got a good idea of a good bean, let me know. I think the problem is I grew up on canned beans from the store. And since none of these beans taste like the beans that I get from the store whenever I cook them, it doesn't really work for me, like the texture's off or something like that. So if you guys have any ideas, let me know in the comment section, because as much as I want to be able to enjoy those beans, I'll be honest with you, when I sauteed the black-eyed peas while they were green, they tasted better to me than the green beans. They tasted more like, well, it was like a green bean with a black-eyed pea flavor, but it was still, the texture was better. So there's that. Alpha did not appreciate that Rooster bucking up on him like that. I've got all of my spicy peppers in this particular bed, and for those of you who've watched all of my previous episodes, you know that I had a very bad pepper year. That seems to be the theme. We're not going to get into it. These are brand new beds. Whatever I get out of it this year is just a bonus on top of getting the beds actually created for the year. So, I started my peppers way too early, put them out way too early, and they stunted for a long, long time. And now that we're in the rainy season and it's cooled, not necessarily cool as in it's like very, very hot right now, but they're not getting as much sun as they would like. During the drought, sun scorch. During the rainy season, they're not quite getting enough sun to produce anything. Plus, whenever we get a storm that has any wind to it at all, it blows all of the blossoms off and they don't produce anything. So, I mean, we do have like a couple of things that are producing, and sadly I don't have any more of my cages to put up. Alpha ran all of the hens and all of the chickens back into the coop because I brought the camera over here. He seriously thinks you guys are chickens. He thinks the camera is a chicken. I cannot get over that. I can't wait until I tell my husband whenever he gets home. But I've had like the poblanos that I have back here. They have produced one poblano. There's two plants. I've gotten one poblano and it got sun scorched. That was it. And then I have got some pepperoncinis. They're producing a little bit, but after we started getting the mega storms, all of the blossoms dropped and it stopped producing for a while. The Thai peppers, which have actually been very, very good, are just now starting to put their blooms back on, and we've got some fruit going on again, but there for a little while, they weren't producing anything either. And the jalapeno has got 2 fruits and one that's been picked on by something, because whatever the worm is that's getting into my tomatoes and other various things inside my yard is also digging into my peppers. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I think I probably need to, the next time it happens, is actually dissect it and see if I can find the culprit so I know what it is. But yeah, they're not really producing a whole lot, and once they get to maturity, if I don't immediately pick it, I can't even let them stay on here and turn red. I have to pick them while they're green because something will find them because they're, I guess, juicy enough. I don't know. Okay, and now we are one more bed back, which means we are on 5, 6, 7, 8, bed number 8. These are supposed to be all of my sweet peppers, and they're kind of producing. They're producing better than the hot peppers right now, except for this. I still don't know what this is specifically. There is theories going around that it is a yellow jalapeno, and it does have the spice of a yellow jalapeno. What it's supposed to be is a bell pepper. I talked about that in a previous video, so I'm not going to harp on about that one, but yeah, we've gotten quite a bit off of this one. Oddly enough, this has been the best producer, even though it was a surprise pepper. And even the minis are producing. If you guys have any good recipes for these, let me show them. Whenever they said minis, I was thinking minis. This is mini. I don't know what to do with this. This looks like a meatball, sort of. And they're starting to turn colors. I've had them go entirely purple and stuff, and I think they could stay on there and turn like other colors too, but as most of the stuff here doesn't survive very long after it's ripened, I've been picking them. But I don't know exactly what to do with them, so I've been cutting them up and putting in with a batch of peppers that I'm going to help use to flavor a hot sauce later on. And these will just add some not quite as spicy stuff to it. So yeah, let me know if you guys have good recipes for this. I'm actually thinking they would be really great just to toss into a salad. I haven't gotten very many salads out of the garden, but they would be interesting. I have gotten a few wraps that were really good. some like sandwich wraps or whatever, with some onions and some peppers, and I'm hungry. Anyway, we also have our, on the trellis back behind me, it's a pink variety of tomato. I don't offhand know any of my varieties anymore. I did such due diligence on trying to get all my tags and stuff written, and now all my tags are gone. I'm going to have to figure out another solution for next year. But it's a pink variety, and it has produced a few good fruit. But for the most part, during the first part of the year, I had to deal with blossom end rot, and now I'm having to deal with some sort of worm getting to them before I do. So as soon as they start blushing, I pull them from the plant, which obviously means they're not fully ripening, so the flavor is not completely there. But I also set them up in the window and allow them to finish out ripening, and they're still very good. So seeing as how they're like one of the few that I have actually managed to get full tomatoes out of, I'm happy with those. All of my other random little plantings I had in here have, for the most part, died for the year. So I cut those guys back and just left the stumps sitting there, and I laid the plants down on the ground because, like I said, I'm looking for organic stuff to add to the gardens. And over here, I have my artichoke and some bunching onions. The artichoke is attempting to be infested by ants. I don't know what the ants think they're doing, but they're building little nests of ant hills up inside the plant, which is very, very frustrating. Now, I found out that the artichoke, which I kind of knew this, yet kind of didn't know this. Mainly, I was just growing it to see if I could grow it. This is a perennial, and it will come back next year. So it might have to get moved, or that one will have to get chopped and dropped, and I will plant another one. I'm going to try and plant a perennial space somewhere that's not in the main part of the garden, because I want to be able to turn these beds over until I fix the soil. Alright, and this bed right here, which is bed number 9, my lettuces that I planted from my own stock are finally to the point where they're ready to give me some seeds, and I am anxious for that because these guys have been growing very, very well. I'll be honest with you, I didn't get but like a couple of harvests off of it, mainly because my squash kind of took it over and they looked kind of pitiful, so I didn't mess with them. I just let them go to seed. And of course the squash is gone. My black-eyed peas finally finished producing, so I chopped and dropped them, and I'm going to turn the soil over and incorporate all of this biomass into the soil and then let it rest for like a month before I do anything else with it, to allow some of this biomatter to break up the soil that we currently have. There's some stuff called soil conditioner at my local box store. I'm not sure how I feel about it because it just looks like wood chips to me. And I have wood chips, just these wood chips are a whole lot more mulched down. And I wonder if maybe having that and then putting some raised bed soil and then some compost and mixing it in. Okay, Alpha. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you letting us know that. I think adding all of those into each one of the beds. I think adding those into the beds, if I can. Is that better, Alpha? Do you approve or no? If I can add some of that stuff into each one of the beds, I think the next year's garden will turn out a whole lot better. Particularly if certain beds are allowed to rest for a little while before. I hope to plant quite a few beds out for fall. This is another bed that I'm going to have to say is kind of a disappointment. My squash did not last anywhere near as long as I wanted it to. Only got like 3 or 4 squash off of it before it finally looked exceptionally pitiful. Flopped over, squash vine borer got into it, and then ultimately, even after attempting to fix it, it completely died on me. So that happened. And then my black-eyed peas, they produced very well to start with, and then for some reason the ants really took an interest in them and started backpacking aphids up into the plants. I mean, like heavy, heavy aphid pressure on these plants. And it was kind of at the point where I didn't really mind so much because these were at the end of their life, and I was like, okay, well, if they're all on here, they're not on my other plants, so I'm just going to leave them. Now, my issue is it goes back to the ant issue, though, is the aphids are not necessarily the problem. Aphids can be handled. Now, back behind that bed is basically a bed that's near about empty except for the green beans, and over there, there's a big spider, so I'm not going to go over there right now. There was corn over there, and we got like 4 pieces of corn off of all of those plants. which is not surprising. The pollination was bad. I did not plant them right. I was not realizing I didn't have enough seeds, and I planted them in 2 different batches. It was just a bad idea all around, but I did realize I can indeed grow corn here, and it gave me some ideas. Nothing else really inside that bed has survived. There's a couple of bunching onions. There is the sweet alyssum that I planted over there from the old garden, so that's still over there. But let me go ahead and move on to another bed, because this one needs to be flipped over and is kind of disappointing. All right, this is basically an herb garden. I've got chicory. I've got, is it hickory or chicory? Chicory, I think. Then I've got feverfew. Then I've got lemon balm. And then on the trellis here, I have got loofahs, which are actually doing very, very well. One of the few things that are going very, very well in the garden, even with having the Mexican sunflower next to it, planted right here at the base, the loofahs are looking magnificent. And then over here, I had some dill planted, which is finally, you know, gone beyond its years. It's seeded, and it's probably going to regrow right here again. Then I have got this, and it is, I'll be honest with you, I have already forgotten. I posted it last time, so it's underneath my community section on what this is. It finally bloomed up. I had a honey nut squash, not a honey nut, butternut squash. I've gotten one from it, but it does look like the squash vine borer has actually found its way into that one as well. So I only got one off of that one. And then I still have my celery, which really hasn't done anything. I'm thinking in the fall this will pick up a whole lot more and actually look like celery. Bunching onions. My cilantro is gone. My cucamelons died from whatever killed off my cucumbers. Still not exactly sure what it was that killed off my cucumbers, aside from worms. But that is basically it for the garden for today. And sadly, I was actually hoping to get out here and work on some stuff. And even though the sun is not out, it is humid and hot. So I don't think I'll be flipping that bed today. That has actually been like the biggest challenge for this month, the whole month of July. As soon as the rain kicked in, it has not stopped at all. My wood chip pile over there is totally saturated, and since I'm moving it via wheelbarrow and having to shovel it, stuff like that, I don't have like a thing to move it for me, is what I'm trying to say. Since I'm having to move it myself, whenever it gets hot and humid and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to do. And since it's always raining, that is like exceptionally heavy. Whenever it was dry, at least I could move it a little bit easier because it wasn't quite as heavy, and I could get it done early in the day. But right now, it's just way too humid to be able to do much of anything. Like, it's on my face. So for this month, I've kind of basically taken a step back and just harvested whatever will happen. Resigned myself that not everything is going to survive through this section, and I just need to be able to cut it down and move on. Rather than allowing it to just sit here and fester and more pests find it, it's time to cut my losses and pick what I can and harvest what I can, and not allow the tiny bit that is coming in. I keep saying tiny like I'm not grateful for it, and I'm exceptionally grateful for it, because these are brand new beds, and this has not been like the best of seasons, and the fact that anything is coming out of this garden at all is mind-blowing. I'll be honest with you. The fact that I've got tomatoes, I've got several bags of them in the freezer, that is awesome. And the fact that I see so much mildew and so many bug problems and so much stuff, but I still got several bags of tomatoes, is still a blessing. So that's something, and I'm learning so much from it, that to say that it's not producing a lot, it's not doing a whole lot, it seems like I'm not allowing myself to, I don't know, be in the moment of the garden. And whenever it's like 80 degrees and 100% humidity, well, it's probably like 95 degrees now, but whenever it's like that, it seems like, okay, I'm not necessarily ungrateful. I'm definitely not ungrateful, but I can see so much around me that I want to work on that I simply can't. And I have to choose to let it go until it's prime time for me to get back out here and work on it. And do what I can with the little bit of time that I do have before it starts getting really, really hot. And just cut the things and leave them in place so that I'll have the biomass for later on, and trying to think ahead in the garden. I don't know, guys. You let me know. every single region of the world has got like different seasons they're dealing with. Like this is their dry season, this is their rain season, this is the season when the humidity is in, this is when it's overcast a whole lot. You guys let me know down in the comment section what season your garden is in and what you're learning from it, and whether or not you're kind of having to take a step back to just watch it and hope that everything turns out okay. And in some cases, for the most part, Mother Nature will fix itself, because even though the rain stops me from working on it, she's still producing. I'm getting like a participation trophy at this particular point because I can't do a whole lot, but she's still doing stuff. So that's something. I mean, I've planted my sweet potatoes and have barely done anything aside from traying some of the vines out of my walkway, and I haven't done anything and they look great. A little bit weird, but great. I've never tried growing them before, so we'll see how that turns out. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. I have no idea exactly what is going to happen in the garden next time. I can tell you I'm going to start looking through my seeds, finding things that I could put in some blank places. But ultimately, the garden is kind of like at a mellow point where I'm just harvesting and not looking for a whole lot of things to start, because I need that pause in between to allow the garden to regulate itself. Like the moisture to regulate itself would be great. And then I can start working the garden again. So hopefully a lot more plans in the next video. I will see you guys in the next one. You have a wonderful day, wonderful night, and you stay shiny. Bye!